The massive space station Nexus Prime floated quietly in the darkness between the stars. Inside its gleaming corridors, Ambassador Lee Sojin walked toward the main meeting room. Her black diplomatic uniform was perfectly pressed, and her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun. Today would mark the first official meeting between Earth's government and the Galactic Council. Commander Park Jin-woo followed 3 steps behind her, his military boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. His security uniform was spotless, and a small ceremonial sword hung at his side. Most people thought the old weapon was just for show, but Park had carried it through 3 wars on Earth before humanity reached the stars. "Are you ready for this, Commander?" Sojin asked, without turning around. "Yes, ma'am. Though I suspect our new friends will have many questions about us." They entered a huge circular room with a high ceiling that showed the stars outside. 12 different alien species sat around a curved table, each group looking stranger than the last. The Zephyrians looked like giant mantis insects, their green eyes reflecting the room's lights. The Resonari were made of living crystal that chimed softly when they moved. The hegemony delegates were massive gray-skinned beings with no visible eyes. Cultural attached Kim Min-ho was already at his station, preparing his presentation. The young man adjusted his glasses nervously as the alien delegates settled into their seats. "Welcome, friends from Earth," said the lead, Zephyrian, in perfectly clear English. Its voice sounded like wind through metal tubes. "We are eager to learn about your species." Sojin took her seat at the human section of the table. "We are honored to be here. Humanity has dreamed of this day for centuries." Minho activated the holographic display, and images of Earth appeared in the air above the table. Ancient cities, famous battles, and historical figures flickered in 3-dimensional light. The aliens leaned forward with curiosity. "Human civilization spans thousands of years," Minho began. "We have always been a species that values courage, honor, and sacrifice for others." He showed pictures of medieval castles, armored warriors, on horseback, and ancient ceremonies. The aliens made various sounds of interest and confusion. "This period gave birth to what we call the Code of Chivalry," Minho continued. "Our greatest warriors were called knights. They lived by strict rules of honor." The lead Zephyrian raised one of its thin arms. "Explain this knight concept more clearly." "These were your military forces." "Knights were warriors, yes, but they were bound by a code that demanded certain behaviors," Sojin replied. "They had to protect innocent people, show mercy to defeated enemies, and put others' lives before their own." A crystalline Resonari delegate began to glow brighter. "This is inefficient. Why would warriors limit their options in combat?" Minho showed more images, knights helping poor villagers, defending churches, and kneeling in prayer. The limitations were the point. A true knight became stronger by choosing to follow these rules. The hegemony representative spoke in a voice like rolling thunder. "Combat effectiveness should be the only concern in warfare. Emotion and sentiment lead to defeat." Another Zephyrian clicked its mandibles in what might have been laughter. "Your species handicapped its best fighters with unnecessary rules. This explains why your technological advancement was so slow." Park's jaw tightened as he stood against the wall. His hand unconsciously moved toward the sword at his side. "But surely these knights were less effective than unrestricted warriors?" asked a tall, thin alien with blue skin. "Our combat computers calculate that such moral limitations would reduce battlefield success by over 20%. Sojin remained calm, though she could see Park's growing tension. Knights were often our most successful warriors, precisely because of their code, not despite it. This caused a wave of confused sounds from around the table. The Resonari's chiming became discordant, while the Zephyrian's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Impossible," stated the lead, hegemony delegate. "Maximum aggression and tactical flexibility always produce superior results." "Perhaps," said a snake-like alien with multiple arms. This explains why humans took so long to develop space travel. Your warriors were too busy playing games of honor to focus on real strength. The alien delegates began talking among themselves in their various languages. Through translation devices, Park could hear fragments of their conversation. Words like primitive, inefficient, and sentimental weakness came through clearly. Minho tried to continue his presentation, showing more examples of knightly virtues and historical battles where honor had led to victory. But the alien seemed more interested in discussing humanity's apparent tactical failings. Your species appears to have evolved past such limitations, observed the lead Zephyrian. Surely modern humans do not still follow these outdated codes. Sojin glanced at Park, who had remained silent throughout the discussion. His face was stone still, but she knew him well enough to see the fire in his eyes. Some traditions never die, she said carefully. The Resonori delegate's crystal body flickered, with what might have been amusement. Quaint historical curiosities, perhaps, but certainly not practical in modern warfare. As the session ended, the aliens filed out, their various sounds of conversation creating a strange symphony in the large room. Park heard more dismissive comments about human warrior fantasies and ceremonial combat. When the room was finally empty, except for the human delegation, Park spoke for the first time. "They don't understand, Ambassador." Sojin nodded, watching the last alien disappear through the doorway. "No, Commander, they don't, but perhaps someday they will." Park's hand rested on his sword's handle. "They've never seen one." 3 days had passed since the cultural meeting, and life on Nexus Prime had settled into a quiet routine. Ambassador Lee Sojin was in her quarters, reading trade reports, when the first explosion shook the entire station. Her coffee cup fell to the floor as the lights flickered and changed to flashing red. The station's alarm system began screaming warnings in 12 different languages. Emergency doors slammed shut throughout the corridors as the computer tried to contain whatever damage had occurred. Sojin pressed her communication device. "Commander Park, what's happening?" Park's voice came through, filled with tension. "We're under attack, Ambassador. Multiple ships, coming in fast. Get to the safe room immediately." Through her small window, Sojin could see dark shapes appearing out of nowhere near the station. Ships that had been invisible moments before now showed their true forms. Sleek, dangerous vessels painted blood red with skull markings on their sides. "Pirates," she whispered to herself. In the security center, Park watched the tactical displays with growing alarm. 27 enemy ships surrounded the station, and more were still appearing as their cloaking devices shut down. "Status report. Lieutenant Choi," he ordered. Lieutenant Choi Dobbin's fingers flew over her control panel. "Sir, they've knocked out our main weapons and communication systems. Station security forces are falling back on all levels. These aren't ordinary raiders. They're using military-grade equipment." Park studied the attack pattern on his screen. The pirates weren't trying to destroy the station. They were boarding it through multiple breach points, moving in coordinated teams toward specific targets. They're after the diplomatic guests, he realized. This is a kidnapping operation. The pirates were led by someone Park recognized from security briefings, a cyborg called Scar Striker, known throughout the galaxy for capturing high-value prisoners and selling them to the highest bidder. The alien delegates would be worth millions in the slave markets. "Sir," Choi's voice was tight with fear, "they've reached the diplomatic quarters. Ambassador Lee's section is cut off. We've lost contact with most of the alien delegations too." Park felt his blood turn cold. Through the security cameras, he could see armed figures in battle armor herding station workers toward the central areas. They moved with professional skill, stunning anyone who resisted and dragging unconscious bodies behind them. "How many hostiles are between us and the diplomatic section?" Park asked. Choi checked her readings. "At least 50, sir. They've set up defensive positions in all the main corridors. The logical move is to fall back to the emergency bunkers and wait for rescue ships. Park was already moving toward the weapons storage area. Prep my gear. Full combat loadout. Sir, that's suicide. Even if we could gather all the remaining security personnel, we're outnumbered 10-1. We should wait for backup. Park opened his personal locker and pulled out his combat armor. Next to his modern plasma rifle hung an old-fashioned sword in a worn leather sheath. Without hesitation, he strapped both weapons to his belt. A knight protects those who cannot protect themselves, he said quietly, checking his armor's power systems. No exceptions. Choi stared at him. Sir, I don't understand. What's a knight got to do with this situation? Park sealed his helmet and picked up his rifle. Lieutenant, continue monitoring the civilian locations. Get me real-time updates on hostile movements. Commander, please. This is a tactical nightmare. You can't save everyone by charging into impossible odds. Park paused at the security center's door. On the screens around them, they could see the alien delegates who had mocked human traditions just days before. Now they cowered in corners as pirates, searched room by room for valuable prisoners. The Zephyrian cultural attache who had called knights inefficient was now curled in terror as armed figures broke down doors nearby. The crystal-bodied delegates were being roughly handled, their harmonic voices crying out in pain as cracks appeared in their bodies. Watch and learn, Lieutenant, Park said, and disappeared into the corridor. He moved through the maintenance tunnels with practiced silence. These passages were designed for repair crews, not combat. But Park had studied every blueprint of the station during his security preparations. The first group of pirates never saw him coming. He dropped through a ceiling panel behind them as they searched empty offices. His blade found the gaps in their armor, while his rifle took out their weapons. In 30 seconds, 4 heavily armed raiders were unconscious on the floor. Control, this is Commander Park, he whispered into his communicator. 4 hostiles neutralized in Section C7, moving to intercept the main group. Choi's voice was amazed. Sir, how did you do that? Their armor should have stopped any blade. Steel finds a way. Lieutenant, now give me the next target. Park continued through the station, using every trick he had learned in decades of combat. But he wasn't fighting like a modern soldier. He was fighting like something the pirates had never encountered, a warrior bound by rules that made no sense to practical minds. When he found pirates threatening innocent station workers, he always intervened, even when it revealed his position to enemy reinforcements. When wounded enemies asked for mercy, he provided medical aid before securing them as prisoners. The pirates began to whisper among themselves about the ghost with the sword, who appeared wherever civilians were in danger. Scar Striker heard these reports with growing anger. This was supposed to be a simple grab-and-go operation, not a running battle with some human who fought like he was in an ancient story. Find him, the cyborg snarled into his communicator. I want to see this fool, who thinks honor is armor. Ambassador Lee Sojin pressed her back against the locked door of Conference Room 7, listening to the heavy footsteps in the corridor outside. The sound of alien voices speaking the rough common language of pirates and mercenaries made her grip her small pistol tighter. Beside her, the Zephyrian cultural attache trembled with fear. Its green compound eyes darted nervously toward the door every time they heard a sound. Just 3 days ago, this same alien had laughed at human warrior traditions. Now, it whispered in terror. They take live prisoners to sell, the Zephyrian said, its voice like wind through broken glass. The Void Raiders never kill valuable hostages. They will drag us to the slave markets on the Outer Rim. Sojin tried to sound confident. Help will come. Commander Park won't abandon us. The Resonari delegate in the corner flickered with dim light, its crystal body cracked from rough handling by the pirates who had captured it earlier. 1 human against an army. Even your greatest warrior cannot defeat such odds. 3 levels below them, Commander Park moved through the maintenance shafts like a shadow. His black combat armor blended with the darkness, but pinned to his chest was a small metal pin showing his military service record. Even in this nightmare, he maintained his standards. His earpiece crackled with Lieutenant Choi's voice. "Sir, I count 19 hostiles moving toward your position from the east corridor. You need to find another route." Park checked his plasma rifle's charge and touched the sword at his side. "Negative, Lieutenant. Continue monitoring the civilian locations. Commander, if you go that way, you'll walk straight into them. This is basic tactics. Avoid unnecessary confrontation." Park reached a junction where 2 maintenance tunnels met. Through a partially open blast door, he could see pirates forcing station personnel to their knees. An elderly human maintenance worker was bleeding from a head wound. A young alien intern was crying in fear. He could have taken the other tunnel. Should have, according to every military manual ever written. The smart move was to avoid the enemy and find a better position. Instead, Park dropped through the ceiling into the corridor. "Gentlemen," he called out in the pirates' common language, his hand resting on his sword handle, "I believe you have business with me." The 12 pirates spun around in surprise, their energy weapons charging up with electronic whines. Their leader, a scarred human wearing stolen military equipment, looked at Park's sword and laughed. "One soldier with an ancient blade. The security on this station is worse than we thought." Park drew his sword in one smooth motion. The polished steel blade caught the corridor's emergency lighting, gleaming like a star. "Not a soldier," he said calmly. "A knight." The first pirate fired his energy rifle, expecting to end the fight. Quickly, Park's blade moved in an arc that seemed impossible, somehow deflecting the energy bolt into the ceiling where it exploded harmlessly. The second pirate learned that his energy shield, designed to stop modern weapons, had gaps that a steel blade could find. The third pirate never got a chance to shoot. In the security center, Lieutenant Choi watched her monitors in amazement. How was he doing this? Park wasn't using superhuman powers or secret technology. He was fighting with something the pirates had never faced: absolute commitment to protecting others, no matter the personal cost. The corridor became a whirlwind of movement. Park's blade danced between energy bolts. His rifle fired with perfect accuracy, and his armored body absorbed hits that would have dropped ordinary soldiers. But more importantly, every action he took was designed to protect the civilians behind him. When the fight ended, 11 pirates lay unconscious on the floor. The 12th had fled, screaming into his communicator about a demon with a sword. Park immediately moved to check on the wounded civilians, using his medical kit to treat their injuries before securing the area. "Thank you," whispered the elderly maintenance worker. "I thought we were dead." "Not while I'm here," Park replied, helping the man to his feet. His earpiece crackled again. "Sir, that was incredible, but you've revealed your position to every hostile on the station. They're converging on your location." Park looked at his sword, now notched from deflecting energy blasts, then at the civilians who were looking at him with wonder and hope. "Good," he said simply. "The more attention I draw, the safer everyone else becomes." He moved deeper into the station, and word of the night with the blade began to spread. Pirates reported encounters with a human who fought like something from ancient stories. He appeared wherever civilians were in danger, always outnumbered, always fighting by rules that made no tactical sense. When pirates surrendered, he accepted their surrender and treated their wounds. When innocent people were threatened, he charged into impossible odds without hesitation. When enemy fire put civilians at risk, he used his own body as a shield. The alien delegates watching through security feeds began to understand something they had dismissed as primitive foolishness. The Zephyrian attach stopped trembling and started paying close attention to the monitors. He could kill them easily, it observed, watching Park spare another group of defeated pirates. But he chooses not to. Why does he limit himself? Ambassador Sojin smiled grimly. Because that's what makes him stronger than they are. Somewhere in the station's depths, Starstriker heard the reports and felt rage building in his cybernetic heart. This human was making him look weak, and in the pirate world, reputation was everything. Bring me his head, the cyborg snarled. I want to meet this fool who thinks honor can stop plasma fire. The real battle was about to begin. The shopping district of Nexus Prime had become a battlefield. Commander Park moved through the abandoned stores and cafes, his damaged armor sparking from multiple energy hits. His left arm hung useless at his side, burned by a plasma blast. That had melted through his shoulder plate. Behind him, a group of 23 civilians followed in frightened silence. They were a mixed group, human engineers, alien technicians, even some of the cleaning crew who had been caught in the wrong place when the pirates attacked. Park had found them hiding in a restaurant's storage room, and was now leading them toward the evacuation tunnels. Stay close and stay quiet, he whispered, checking around a corner before waving them forward. His sword was in his good hand now, the blade chipped and stained from hours of fighting. Through his earpiece, Lieutenant Choi's voice was tight with worry. Sir, you have hostile contacts closing in from 3 directions. 40+ pirates, including heavy weapons teams. You need to leave those civilians and find cover. Park looked back at the frightened faces following him. An elderly Resonare delegate whose crystal body was cracked with fear. A young human mother carrying her sleeping child. A maintenance worker who could barely walk after being beaten by pirates. Negative, Lieutenant. These people are under my protection. Commander, please be reasonable. You can't fight that many enemies while protecting civilians. It's tactically impossible. Park found a defensive position in the district's central plaza, where overturned vendor stalls provided some cover. The civilians huddled behind him as he checked his rifle's power cell, nearly empty. Sir, Choi continued, Starstriker himself is leading this group. He's bringing military-grade weapons and armor, even if you were at full strength. A knight doesn't abandon his charges, Lieutenant, no matter the odds. The first pirates appeared at the plaza's entrances, moving in professional formation. Park counted 36 of them, armed with the latest energy weapons, and wearing combat armor that could stop anything short of heavy artillery. Leading them was the massive figure of Starstriker himself, his cybernetic enhancements gleaming under the emergency lighting. The famous human knight, the cyborg called out, his voice amplified by electronic implants. You've caused me considerable trouble. Park stood up from behind his makeshift cover, placing himself between the pirates and the civilians. His armor was cracked, his weapon nearly depleted, and his body screamed with pain from a dozen wounds. By any reasonable measure, he was finished. Let them go, he said simply. Your business is with me. Starstriker laughed, a harsh sound like breaking metal. Business. This stopped being business when you made me look weak. Now it's about reputation. The cyborg raised his weapon, a massive energy cannon that could punch through starship hulls. Around him, 35 other pirates aimed their rifles at Park's position. Any last words, Knight? Park raised his damaged blade and smiled. I am Commander Park Jinwoo of Earth. I am sworn to protect those who cannot protect themselves. If you want them, you come through me. The pirates opened fire as one, the air filled with deadly energy bolts, enough firepower to level a small building. When the barrage stopped, they expected to find nothing but ash and metal fragments. Instead, they found Park still standing. His armor was completely destroyed, held together only by emergency sealants. His rifle had been vaporized in his hands. But somehow, impossibly, he had carved a path through the energy storm and reached their forward positions. His sword, despite being an ancient piece of steel, had found ways to deflect or absorb attacks that should have been unstoppable. But, more importantly, he was no longer alone. Station personnel had been watching the security feeds throughout the battle. They had seen this one human charge into impossible odds again and again, never retreating, never abandoning anyone who needed help. His example had started something that spread like fire through the station. Now they came. Engineers carrying improvised weapons made from maintenance tools. Security guards who had found their courage again. Even some of the alien delegates, inspired by what they had witnessed, joined the fight with whatever they could find. A human technician named Kim Yun-soo had rigged a plasma cutter into a weapon. For the night, he shouted, charging into the pirate's flank. An alien engineer used his knowledge of the station's systems to shut down the gravity in the pirates' section, sending them floating helplessly while the defenders attacked from secure positions. Even the Zephyrian cultural attach, the same alien who had mocked human warrior traditions, picked up a fallen pirate's weapon and fired with shaking hands. The tide of battle turned not because of superior firepower or tactics, but because one person's absolute commitment to his principles had reminded everyone else what they were capable of when they chose to fight for something greater than themselves. Starstriker found himself surrounded, his forces scattered or captured by a ragtag army of civilians and station personnel who fought with the desperate courage of people protecting their home. Impossible, he snarled, his cybernetic systems struggling to process what had happened. You were outnumbered 50-1. Park, barely able to stand, but still gripping his sword, looked at the faces around him, humans and aliens, workers and diplomats, all standing together because they had learned what it meant to be brave. Not outnumbered, he said quietly, just waiting for everyone else to remember who they were. The final battle was about to begin, but now the knight would not fight alone. The central hub of Nexus Prime was the largest open space on the station, with a high ceiling that normally displayed beautiful views of the stars. Now, it had become the final battleground between the pirates and everyone who had found the courage to fight back. Starstriker stood in the center of the hub with his remaining 12 pirates, using the captured diplomatic delegates as human shields. Ambassador Lee Sojin knelt, with her hands bound, surrounded by alien representatives who had spent days debating the logic of human warrior traditions. Now they were about to witness the final test of those traditions. Commander Park entered the hub alone. His armor had been completely destroyed in the last battle, leaving him in his torn undershirt and tactical pants. Blood ran down his face from multiple wounds, and his left arm was clearly broken. But he still carried his sword, and he walked with the same steady dignity he had shown from the first day. Behind him, the sounds of fighting had finally stopped. The coalition of station personnel and aliens had defeated the last of the pirate forces throughout the rest of the station. Only this final group remained, cornered, but still dangerous. The legendary human knight, Starstriker, called out, his cybernetic voice echoing in the large space. You've destroyed my entire operation. Do you know how much money you've cost? May Park stopped 20 meters away from the hostages. His rifle was gone, lost in the last battle. All he had left was his damaged sword and his unwavering commitment to protect innocent people. Let them go, he said simply. Take me instead. The cyborg laughed, raising his massive energy cannon. Why would I do that? These diplomatic prisoners are worth millions in the slave markets. You're worth nothing except the satisfaction of killing you. Park looked at the faces of the hostages. The Zephyrian cultural attach who had called knights inefficient met his eyes with something that might have been respect. The crystal Resonari delegates flickered with dim light. Their bodies cracked, but their attention focused entirely on the human who had fought for them. They're innocent people, Park replied. I'm the one who hurt your operation. Your fight is with me. Starstriker's enhanced vision systems scanned Park's damaged body. You can barely stand, human. Your primitive weapon is useless against modern technology. What makes you think you can stop me? Park raised his sword despite his injuries. The Blade was chipped and stained, notched from deflecting energy blasts, but it still caught the hub's lighting like a mirror. Because I'm not fighting for myself. The cyborg aimed his weapon directly at Park's chest. Then you'll die for nothing, just like all the others who believed in honor and courage. No, Park said quietly. I'll die for something. There's a difference. Starstriker fired his energy cannon at point-blank range. The blast should have vaporized Park instantly. Instead, something impossible happened. The energy bolt struck Park's raised sword and somehow dispersed, the deadly energy scattering harmlessly across the hub's walls. For a moment, everyone stared in shock. Then Park moved. He covered the distance to Starstriker in 3 quick steps, his damaged blade finding the one weakness in the cyborg's advanced armor. The fight lasted only seconds, but in those seconds, the watching aliens saw something that changed their understanding of humanity forever. They saw a warrior who could have struck to kill, but chose to disable instead. They saw someone who showed mercy to an enemy who had shown none to others. They saw a person whose strength came not from technology or physical power, but from an unbreakable commitment to protecting others. When the battle ended, Park stood over the defeated cyborg, then immediately moved to check on the hostages, despite his own severe injuries. His broken arm hung useless, blood ran from multiple wounds, and he swayed on his feet from exhaustion. Medical teams rushed into the hub, led by Lieutenant Choi and a mixed group of human and alien responders, as they worked to free the hostages and treat Park's injuries. Ambassador Sojin found herself approached by the Zephyrian cultural attached. The insectoid being's compound eyes reflected the hub's lights as it spoke, its voice filled with something that sounded like wonder. Now I understand, it said, watching as the medical team carefully loaded Park onto a stretcher. Your knight was not inefficient at all. He bound himself with rules, not because he was weak, but because following those rules made him stronger than any weapon. Sojin nodded, following the medical team toward the station's hospital section. Park's eyes were closed, but his breathing was steady and strong. That's what honor means, she explained to the gathering crowd of aliens who had watched the battle. It's not about following easy rules when it's convenient. It's about choosing to be better than you have to be, especially when it costs you something. The Resonari delegate chimed softly, its cracked crystal body flickering with new understanding. He made us all stronger by his example. We fought because he showed us how. As word of the battle spread through the station, and beyond, the Galactic Council found itself reconsidering many assumptions about humanity. The species they had dismissed as emotionally primitive had just demonstrated a form of strength that their advanced civilizations had forgotten how to achieve. In the medical bay, Commander Park Jinwoo slept peacefully while doctors worked to repair his injuries. Around him, representatives from a dozen alien species quietly discussed what they had witnessed, and slowly began to understand what it truly meant to be a knight. The universe had just learned that sometimes the oldest truths are the strongest ones.